Hey, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to today's webinar. Today, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen while we let everybody join. We'll give you all just a few seconds, a few minutes to join with us. But while that occurs, I will share my screen so you can, of course, see what we're going to be talking about today, which is, well, let me get the right one up. Hold on a second. We are going to be talking about zero-touch deployments. And we're going to be talking about comparing that with the manual way of doing this. There we go. So bear with me here. I get that appropriately set up. I got to get the right screen in. That always helps, doesn't it? Okay, here we go. Now we can share the screen. And we've got the appropriate one up. Okay. There we go. All right. Okay. So hopefully that gave everyone enough time to get started. To join so we can go ahead and get started. We'll be talking about zero-touch deployments versus manual deployments in ServiceNow. And of course, how X-Type does zero-touch deployments and compare that and contrast that to manual deployments. So first and foremost, you should know that I am your host, Scott Wilson. I am the head of product marketing here at X-Type and a technologist. I tend to refer to myself as a technologist just because of my background. The short version is I started my career as a software engineer, uh, moved into professional services, into sales, and now here I am in marketing. So I kind of have spanned the entire full gambit and full cycle of software from both building the code, selling the code, implementing the code, and now, of course, marketing the code. But with that, let's just go ahead and jump into things, shall we? So what we're going to be covering today is just an introduction to this concept, zero-touch deployments versus manual deployments. We'll go into specifics about zero-touch deployments and then how we can govern multiple ServiceNow environments with that methodology and user access and security standardization across your entire ServiceNow landscape. So with that, let's go to the introduction. So first things first, understanding what the impact of spreadsheet deployment plans are. You're probably all familiar with building your release plans or actually building the release payload list in a spreadsheet. That's a very common practice for virtually every ServiceNow customer that we talk to. The challenge with this, of course, is that the information that you put and itemize into a spreadsheet is inaccurate or incomplete. You pull up multiple browser tabs and you're going into multiple instances and you're going through and trying to itemize and catalog all the things that need to be in that release. And of course, you go to the effort to try to order them in the appropriate order. What our large customers are telling us is that this can take multiple days. Some of them refer to this as a war room. Some of them, it's just release planning. But the point is, it's a significant manual effort to build this up and to build this sheet in hopes that it's accurate. But why are you building the spreadsheet in the first place? Well, you're building it because you're going to toss that spreadsheet over the wall and have another team follow those instructions. And they need to follow the items in that spreadsheet in the precise order and items within each row in the precise order, meaning in each row, maybe they list a couple of scripts that have to be executed. Well, those scripts need to be executed in the precise order before moving to the second row in that spreadsheet. But one of the things that can happen besides the impact of, okay, maybe we skipped something, we missed something, and something didn't make it in the spreadsheet, is that in the heat of battle, when we're actually doing our release after hours, there's a concept that we find is called the last update set wins. And what this means is that as you're going through the spreadsheet and you're now applying some of these update sets, you'll come across the conflict error, right? Or a preview error or something that has to be troubleshooted and figured out. Well, why are we having this error when we migrated this update set or this app to this instance? And it could be any number of things, right? There's a missing dependency or a conflicting dependency, whatever. But the point is, it has to be investigated and troubleshooted and resolved. Well, under pressure, what tends to happen is we go, well, we have let's say we have a couple of update sets that pretty much have the same payload. So we'll just take the latest one. And maybe this is because legitimately, well, we deprecated the other previous set way on and it made it into the spreadsheet by accident. Okay, that could be legitimate, but the point is an update set, for example, could include multiple things. It's not just as simple as just using the last update set wins. And what you wind up doing unintentionally is you can orphan some of the actual updates that you actually wanted to make it into your production release. And that's a problem. The other problem is that now that you've orphaned not just the updates, but perhaps abandoned some of these update sets as you move to releases, now you got this dead weight that's sitting throughout your ServiceNow landscape. And it could literally just be benign, but you could also now be baking in future conflicts and preview errors that also now need to be troubleshooted and try to resolve and figured out as you migrate just even to QA, much less to production later on down the road. So there's a big opportunity for impacting the amount of time you need to do a release to fit within your release time window. I'm sure you probably all have small windows in which these updates have to go in. And you're also just overloading yourself with all this manual effort to troubleshoot, resolve, and figure out what's going on. Not to mention you end up unintentionally missing updates that you thought are in production, but are actually not in production. So that's just kind of the background. So how do we resolve this? What's the big difference? So I'm bringing up two different views here for you. We've got a X-type screen view of a release package, an X-type release package, and we've got our sample spreadsheet to the right. So I already covered some of the problems with the spreadsheet, but I've compiled a list, our sample of what a spreadsheet might look like. You can see the various steps. It's just not that I've got a row comprises each step. Each row comprises a thing that needs to occur, and there could be steps, multiple steps within each row. And I already covered how long it takes me to do this. But not only can it be error prone to build this sheet and laborious to build this sheet, you're also relying on a human being that's now going to have to follow this line by line. So they're always, doing the stop and stare, looking at the next line item, and then they're clicking each stroke on the keyboard minute by minute. Computers don't have to stop and stare. Computers don't have to click keyboard keys, and they don't have to double check the spelling. They run literally, well, basically at the speed of light, don't they? They just execute the line items as they are. So you take all those little tiny gaps in time that manually account to seconds on an instant by instant basis that account for hours, and computers can do this, of course, in just seconds. So on the left-hand side, what you're seeing is X-type. Since X-type is installed, it's a native application that sits across all of your ServiceNow instances, and it knows what is where. And since it knows what is where, and we'll get to that in our next slide, next point of discussion, what that provides you as a benefit is instead of manually building a spreadsheet, is you can just literally pick and click and drag and drop your payload. And you can see here in the sample screen set, you can pick from update sets, records, data, applications. You can execute the scripts, upload XML files. And this last one, which I'll talk about in a second, is copy from another X-type release package. So instead of trying to have all these multiple tabs open and going through all this effort, you can just literally click a button here and say, oh yeah, these are the update sets that I want. Here are the records that need to occur. And I can drag and drop them in the appropriate table. And you can see the little arrange control there at the top where it says arrange table. You can then order them in the appropriate thing. And you're not throwing that over the wall for another human being and hoping that they won't make errors as they follow this. As I often say, computers do what you say, not what you mean. And so this is your record of your payload. The other thing is to consider here with the spreadsheet, how are you guaranteeing the spreadsheet's immutable from an audit and compliance standpoint? I mean, do you really want to have to worry about the storage of the spreadsheet and the longevity of it. No. In X-Type, you don't have to worry about it. The release package is immutable. Once it's been released, that's it. That is your record of what actually occurred. Not what was planned, but what was planned and what was actual. See, if you can appreciate with a spreadsheet, there's an opportunity for this to represent what was planned and may not represent what was actually done by a human being. And from my own experience, troubleshooting a lot of problems that occur, that gap between what was planned and what actually occurred can take a lot of time trying to resolve, because as a human, we assume that we did what was on the list. And we do this a lot. So we would just assume, why would I have skipped, I don't know, skip step 14, for example, here, because I followed the first 13. Why would I have done that? To err is to human, as we say, right? But with a computer, it'll do what you say. Now, this custom package, the copy from a package, is another really key feature that X-Type has, because you may have particular run books that from your policy or processes, they must run with every production release, period. That must happen regardless. Well, with X-Type, you can build a package template essentially, and then I can just copy that from the template. So as I build the payload for this release, I can then include the standardized payload from whatever our corporate policy is. That way, every release does include the specific things that need to occur for every release. So you have greater standardization, greater predictability, greater consistency, and definitely greater ease in just building your payload, as I said, by point and click, drag and drop, as opposed to the manual method of multiple browser tabs and manually typing and copying and pasting this list to the right. So you literally go from perhaps days to minutes and maybe a few hours building this. Okay, let's go to our next screen. So I'd mentioned about standardizing the multi-environments, or being able, since X-Type can see all of your instances across your landscape. You install X-Type, and by the way, you can do this today. We have a free version on the ServiceNow store. You can go install X-Type View. Go look for it in the ServiceNow store. You can install it, and immediately you're going to see a similar viewpoint, a panel like this, a dashboard, where you're going to see all of your plugins, store apps, and scoped apps across all of your instances, including the ServiceNow versions on each of those instances. Okay. But as you can see here, we have a consolidated view of everything, whether it's an app, a batch update sets are included here, as you can see them located here, and everything's color coded. The flags are going to tell you the point of origin, very important. You can see if something's coming in where it shouldn't. Hopefully, in theory, everything is coming from your dev instance. But if somebody put in a hotfix in production, for example, you would see the flag appear in production, telling you that, hey, that's the point of origin for this particular update set. And I'm showing you an update set screen. Purple means that this update set is in progress. It has not been marked as complete yet. The error means that maybe there's an approval that has to occur, or some type of, conflict or preview error that needs to be resolved. In other words, it's something that needs to look at. And of course, red obviously means that there's a failure. But the point is, with one view, I can see everything that's in my landscape. I can quickly filter and get to just the delta that's between them. And of course, this would help me very quickly come up with the list of things that I need to migrate to production. And I just go create an X-Type release package and pick those things, and I'm done. I'm not having to manually go figure this out myself. The beautiful thing about this is that I'm looking at actuals. I'm not dealing with the theoretical plan. I can match my plan against the actuals of what actually exists in my environment, or environments, plural, and take appropriate action. This also allows me to ensure that all of my instances are as production-like as possible. I'd mentioned before, when you actually push something to production, and in that release process, you may come across conflicts, errors, or things that have to be troubleshooted and investigated and resolved. Well, with X-Type here, I can actually see, before having to do any of that stuff, everything what might potentially cause me a problem. Okay. All right. So with that, hold on just a second here. I am going to fix my video. Looks like we're having a couple of technical problems today, but Will, it's all right. We don't need to see my face. We're going to go straight to the screen. All right, so let's go to the next screen, shall we? All right, so governing multiple ServiceNow environments. Well, one of the beautiful things about X-Type is that you can set what your policy and your process is, right? And you can ensure that this is going to be followed every time. As I said, computers do what you say, not what you mean, right? So whatever your process is, your policy is, X-Type can ensure that that's being governed. And X-Type under the covers is using the out-of-the-box native migration propagation mechanics of ServiceNow. So you can trust and take full confidence that X-Type is using things that you already know, have already been certified, and are already familiar with, okay? But you're also now getting the comfort of knowing and the confidence of knowing that whatever your process needs to be to move things from dev all the way through and up into production can be followed, and be followed in an automatic format, including all of your approvals, even if they're manual approvals. All right. So you get the predictability, you get the consistency, and you reduce or eliminate the risk for loss of work. And so that's a huge boom. And then lastly here, the second thing is the ServiceNow change request. We obviously integrate to change management. So you can create that release package that I showed you before in X-Type. And then what you can do is then tie this and integrate it to your change request. So ServiceNow can still be your system of record, which is probably your system of record today for all of your ServiceNow releases. And X-Type is not here to replace that. We're here to help you expedite and accelerate your process and policies as they stand today, and enhance them and enrich them along the way. And so you can go ahead and set up a change request ticket. X-Type can attach itself to that ticket. And when the ticket is now approved by whatever process you have, then that can be the triggerable event that'll kick off an X-Type release into production. So hopefully that demonstrates, besides everything else I've talked about, is that we're trying to help expedite and enrich your current process and your current experience in ServiceNow. And so you get all the other benefits and can still follow your current policies and practices. So then the last thing I want to talk about here, and then I'll jump to questions. User access security standardization. You can now standardize that across your entire landscape. Today, what a lot of our customers tell us is that developers have elevated privileges on all their instances. Well, because they need it. They're the ones who need to migrate it. They're the ones who need to go in and do all of this stuff. With X-Type, they don't need those elevated privileges, okay? X-Type will handle the migration. X-Type, you've already told it the order in which things can run, so X-Type will go ahead and do that. So this is has a huge benefit in practicing the least privilege access, right? And it also gives you great confidence that now you're enforcing your security policies across all of your instances, and that reduces the risk of, security breaches and compromises and what have you. You don't want those to occur. None of us do. And cybersecurity is becoming an increasingly big deal nowadays. So the nice thing is now you can limit and scope or box in the people who have appropriate access to the appropriate layers or appropriate instances, and not all of them across the board. So this allows you to have better standardization from a security standpoint and user access standpoint to all of your instances. And that's pretty much it. That's pretty much what I wanted to cover today. We're going to open it up to your questions here, and we have a few I can see. So obviously, just in summary, zero-touch deployments, no more spreadsheets. You don't need the spreadsheets anymore. You got multi-environment standardization, so all production-like, all of your instances can be production-like. You've got multi-environment governance, so all of your payload can move the same way every time, and they can move faster, of course. So you have greater consistency, and you can have better expectations on the time windows. You can also meet those time windows because they're obviously getting shorter and shorter across the board. And then lastly is practicing least privilege access. So you have better security consistency across all of your landscapes. And with that, let me just go ahead and open it up to some questions here to see what we got here. So the first question I have is, it looks like a clarification question, which is basically saying, wait a minute, so you're saying that developers don't need admin privileges to production? Yes, that's correct. X-Type could eliminate that. I mean, obviously, if somebody needs appropriate access to get in there and resolve a particular issue, that you may need to temporarily grant someone the appropriate um, privileges. But the reality is, you shouldn't need those. It should be X-Type is the one that's handling those motions upstream or downstream, rather. Well, we handle both directions. We can go forward and backwards, but that is correct. So developers no longer need elevated privileges, carte blanche across your ServiceNow landscape. Next question. So how does X-Type know what is where? Well, so X-Type is a native ServiceNow set of products or apps, and they sit in your ServiceNow instances. And so from there, they can have line of sight in each of those instances. And that's how we provide that simple dashboard that I showed you. And we color code everything. We make it very easy for you to see what is where. And what it's just not from a, boy, that looks nice, or from a reporting standpoint, that allows X-Type great power in helping you control what is moving where and see what those deltas or differences are, as well as now being able to just drag and drop and pick and click your way to your production release without having to manually do that. Hopefully that answers that question. Looks like I got another question here. So if ServiceNow is our system of record, you're saying X-Type can support. So this is a clarification question, confirming that we can integrate to ServiceNow tickets. So, and the additional part of the question is, so if somebody approves a ticket, you're saying X-Type can trigger a release, and that is absolutely correct. So we, being native to ServiceNow, can also integrate to your tickets. And the beautiful thing with this is, right, is that for all the people who don't have access to X-Type, they can just move and operate as they normally would today, right? And so they're going to go into ServiceNow and operate in ServiceNow like they normally do. Your normal managerial approval processes will occur as they always have. And for them, those managerial levels or certain levels of the organization, they don't need to know you're using X-Type. They're just doing what they normally do. But once that approval occurs in ServiceNow, then X-Type will go pick up and go run off that payload and put it into production and then update it with the status and what has been done. So ServiceNow is still your system of record. You're getting to do things like you normally do. And if you want to see what was actually released in part of that payload, X-Type always has that immutable record of what actually occurred. Okay, I think those are all the questions we have. Those are all the ones I'm seeing. So with that, hope you have a great day, a great weekend. And if you want to know more, two things, please visit us at xtype.io, as already stated. And as I already stated as well, please go to the ServiceNow store. You can start for free today by just going to the ServiceNow store, typing X-Type View, and installing our free product today and get multi-environment visibility. And with that, thank you all so much. Bye.